Oral presentations. Step-by-step guidelines for argumentative oral presentations. Overview. People can follow your talk better if they know beforehand how it's going to be organized. This is the reason for the overview. It'll let your audience know how you've structured your presentation. You'll inform them what your thesis is. You'll also back up your thesis with evidentiary arguments. Then, to show that you've considered more than one viewpoint, you'll provide a counter-argument, which you're going to refute. You'll end your talk with a summary of what you've covered. Afterwards, if you're required to do so, you'll answer questions from your audience. Here's a sample overview. Welcome to my presentation on what killed the dinosaurs. Today I'm going to share my argument for the causes, supports for my thesis, a look at a major objection by critics, and why that's invalid. After a summary of my talk, I'll be available to answer any questions you may have. You want to start your introduction with a hook, something that's going to get your listeners' attention. It can be a little-known fact or statistic. It could be a quotation or a short anecdote. But the one thing you want to steer clear of is a question. Most of us simply are not professional enough of speakers or writers, so it's hard to think of a thought-provoking question. It's just better to leave questions to the professionals. You also want to let your listeners know why your topic is important. In other words, what's in it for me? When they understand that there's something for them to get out of it, then they're going to listen more carefully. In addition, your listeners need to know that your topic is debatable. Without two opposing sides, there wouldn't be an argument, would there? Also, you need to let to end your introduction by letting your audience know what your thesis is. Here's a sample introduction a speaker might use in a talk about the demise of dinosaurs. A journey back into prehistoric times is only as far away as the local zoo. Here you can see alligators and crocodiles. You may have been fascinated by their ancient relatives when you were a child. Well, who were these relatives? Their relatives were the dinosaurs. The author of When Did the Dinosaurs Live says that they once roamed the earth from about 245 million years ago until their disappearance about 66 million years ago. The reason for their demise might teach us how to avoid going the way of the dinosaur. While not everyone agrees about the reason for the demise of these creatures, today we're going to consider several major reasons how geochemistry and biology come together to explain why T-Rex and its dinosaur cousins disappeared. Let's start our journey now. In order to prove your thesis, you're going to need to provide your audience with convincing, well-structured arguments. It's best if you can come up with 3 reasons why your thesis is true, 3 arguments. To make your argument convincing, You need to use credible expert evidence from peer-reviewed journal articles. Here is the structure that you're going to use. You're going to start with the specific reason your thesis is correct. Then you're going to use a connecting explanation, a transitional sentence that explains to connect to the expert evidence, your research from peer-reviewed sources. And you want to be sure that you let the audience know who the expert is. It makes you more credible. Again, you explain that. Then if you have examples, statistics, that's very good. That helps your audience to understand better. And again, you use a transitional sentence to connect it to a concluding sentence. Let's look at a sample evidentiary argument. A global scale catastrophe of volcanic eruptions was the leading reason for the demise of dinosaurs. This series of ongoing volcanic eruptions dwarfed anything humans have ever seen. They were so unimaginably powerful that they left nearly 200,000 square miles, that's 518,000 square kilometers, of what's now India buried in volcanic basalt up to 1.5 miles thick. In 2007, Michael Lemonick claimed that the gases and particulate matter spewed out by these eruptions played a big role in the dinosaurs' doom as well. How big a role, however, depended on exactly when the eruptions began and how long they lasted. Quote, "We can now say with confidence," says Blair Shern in 2015, "that the eruption started 250,000 years before the extinction event and lasted for a total of 750,000 years, end quote. And that, he says, strengthens the idea that the eruptions could have contributed to the mass extinction of multiple species, most importantly, that of the dinosaurs. In short, the results of this volcanic eruption killed off the dinosaurs." Remember earlier we said that the counter-argument lets our audience know that we've considered more than one point of view. Our counter-argument is organized the same way we structured our argument. We are specific what some critics may object to, specifically, not, hey, this is wrong. Okay, we connect it with explanation to the research we have done, our expert evidence from peer-reviewed sources. Then we have a connecting explanation of that evidence, and we add examples. We connect the examples and all to our concluding sentence. Here's a sample counter-argument. However, some critics may claim that the extinction of the dinosaurs was a crime committed by a lone gunman, an incoming asteroid that struck the Earth 65 million years ago. When it hit, it filled the air with sun-blocking dust. In 1980, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Luis Alvarez and his son Walter, a geologist, proposed the giant impact theory of dinosaur extinction. Their evidence was compelling. A thin layer of iridium in the Earth's sediment dating to about the time of the die-off. Iridium is rare on Earth, but it's common in asteroids. The iridium layer, mapped by the Alvarezes in scattered sites around the world, suggested an asteroid that vaporized on impact, spreading a cloud throughout the stratosphere. The argument seemed sealed in the 1990s when geologists realized that a huge crater centered in Mexico was almost certainly caused by a giant impact at just the time the extinctions occurred. This seemed to convince critics that the impact of the incoming asteroid may have been the reason for the extinction of dinosaurs. Now it's time to refute the critics' objection. We do this by acknowledging that in some cases the critics' objection may be true. Then we refute their objection by stating the specific reason why it's wrong. Note that from this point on, the refutation follows the common structure used previously. Specific reason, the counter-argument is wrong, connecting explanation, research from peer-reviewed source, connecting explanation, example with statistics, etc., connecting evidence, and then a concluding sentence. Here's a sample refutation. It may be true that the impact of a massive asteroid's collision with Earth may have played a minor role in the extinction of dinosaurs. However, a look at plankton disproves this theory. Gerta Keller, a Princeton University paleontologist, claims that the proof can be found thanks to microscopic fossils of Foraminifera, a type of plankton that largely died with the dinosaurs. Precisely dating the dinosaurs' demise is tough because most bones disintegrate before they can be fossilized. Plankton, in contrast, are preserved in ocean sediments. Keller studied sediments near the impact site in Mexico, where a massive bloom of new plankton species should have emerged with a handful of millenniums after the impact, or within a handful of millenniums after the impact, taking advantage of the evolutionary room the extinctions created in the ocean. She found her bloom all right, but 300,000 years later than expected. She then went to Texas and India and found the same thing. Quote, "We've shown convincingly," she says, "the mass extinction came about 300,000 years after the asteroid impact." End quote. In other words, the aftermath of volcanic eruptions rather than an asteroid hitting the Earth was the major factor in the demise of the dinosaur. A summary is, in effect, the conclusion of your presentation. It helps your listeners to remember what you've said. You restate your thesis, you summarize your main points, and you end with an echo back to the hook in your introduction. Following this organizational pattern helps them to remember the central thesis of the talk and how you supported this thesis. The echo technique helps the talk to come full circle. Here's a sample summary. As we've seen, climate change triggered by massive volcanic eruptions led to extinction of the dinosaur. These eruptions buried large areas of the earth in volcanic basalt up to 1.5 miles thick. The gases and particulate matter spewed out by these eruptions could have played a big role in the dinosaurs' doom as well. The changing temperatures necessary for the survival of these huge reptiles' food sources changed. Their food supply disappeared, as did the dinosaurs. That's why 66 million years later, we can only see their smaller relatives when we visit our local zoo. Before we go, let's remember we need to cite our works that we have referred to. Otherwise, we're guilty of plagiarism, and we don't want to be guilty of plagiarizing.